I've likened this office to a referee in a football game, and if the referee's doing a good job, you're not talking about the referee, and that's my aspiration, and I really appreciate you having me on here, but hopefully you're not talking about me too much in the future.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Soon after his win there to become Maricopa County, Arizona's next recorder, it's a position that leads the county's elections department. Stephen Richer, who you just heard from, highlighted his preference that his position remain out of the headlines. But that hope was short-lived. Richer felt compelled to speak out this weekend, just 4 months after taking office, in response to the former president's comments about the audit of 2020 ballots underway in his county. On Saturday, Donald Trump put out a statement that the entire Maricopa County voter database had been deleted illegally and that ballots were tampered with and missing. All of that, not true. And that is what prompted Richer to send out this stunning tweet. Quote, "Wow, this is unhinged. I'm literally looking at our voter registration database on my other screen right now. We can't indulge these insane lies any longer. As a party, as a state, as a country." Richer, a Republican, recognizing the irreparable damage Trump's big lie is having on his county, on his state, on our democracy. And yet, the audit in his county continues. From the AP, quote, "The former president's statement came as Republican Senate President Karen Fann has demanded the Republican-dominated Maricopa County Board of Supervisors come to the Senate to answer questions raised by the private auditors she has hired. The auditors have moved at a snail's pace and had to shut down Thursday after counting about 500,000 ballots. They plan to resume counting in a week, after high school graduation ceremonies planned for the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, which they rented for the recount. Arizona, of course, is not the only state where confidence in our election system is being actively undermined as we speak. A new report in the New York Times outlines a pattern in new election legislation of increasing penalties for poll workers who make mistakes or violate election code. Quote, "The infractions that could draw more severe punishment run the gamut from seemingly minor lapses in attention or innocent mistakes to more clearly willful actions in defiance of regulations. In Texas, taking any action that would make observation not reasonably effective for a poll watcher would carry new penalties. In Florida, failing to have an election worker continuously supervise a drop box would result in major fines. Willfully flouting new laws, like ones in states including Iowa and Texas that ban sending absentee ballots to voters who have not requested them, would also lead to tougher penalties. This targeting of poll workers is all part of the larger goal for Republicans. And that's according to the Washington Post. Columnist Fred Hyatt describes it as a ploy to establish an insurance policy to potentially steal the election if the vote suppression strategy fails. He points out how local election officials were the ultimate safeguards who prevented the 2020 results from being overturned. Hyatt points out this, quote, "As Republicans target the people and positions that stood in their way last time, they're also attempting to change the rules so a pro-Trump legislature could more easily override the will of the people and the objections of any honest Secretary of State who stood in the way." The GOP's continued assault on democracy is where we start this hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Pete Strzok is here, former FBI counterintelligence agent and author of the book Compromised. Also joining us, Jason Johnson, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University and an MSNBC contributor. And Tim Miller is back, writer-at-large for The Bulwark and former communications director for Jeb Bush's campaign. So, Tim, I started with that sound from a Republican because any extremist movement or crisis, and Pete Strzok knows this better than me, can't be cracked open by an outsider viewed suspiciously by those who are being radicalized. But you see Republican after Republican sort of reaching this breaking point, and it isn't just Liz Cheney. It's, it's local elections officials who have their nose against the glass, who see the destruction of democracy happening in real time. And I'm not going to ask you if you think it'll make a difference, but I am going to ask you if you think it sort of creates a permission structure for more people who see this happening to speak out.
Well, I hope so, Nicole. And look, I think as you are, I'm pretty negative in the big picture about where the party is going. But, if you look at the Liz Cheney numbers, for example, you see that there's about 20% of the party that is upset with what's happening with Liz Cheney. And so, while it should be 80% that's upset, well, I wish that number was flipped. I think you do see signs that there could be a crack in the coalition. And I think that while it's kind of scary that we have to rely on people like secretaries of state and state recorders and, members of county election boards to be the ones standing between our democracy and one major political party's attempt to overthrow it and become autocratic. It's also inspiring, right, to see people like Richer and Raffensperger and Gabriel Sterling, who may we disagree with on various policy items, but who stood up for the rule of law and for our democracy, and so that's needed. I will say this one more thing on the concerning side. If you look at the state Senate president in Arizona, what is happening, what we all are seeing in Congress is being infected in all these state legislatures. This state Senate president, based on my friends in Arizona who I've talked to, is not any different than like Elise Stefanik. She knows that this was a real election, right? But she's getting all this pressure. And so that's why she's now hosting this phony audit, right? It's the same trends that you're seeing with McCarthy and Stefanik, people who should know better, who should do what Richer is doing and are not. And so that's the scary part of all this, that we have to rely on state auditors because so many other Republicans are falling down on their duty.
And I think he's the county recorder, and we have to rely on county officials because, Jason, this is what national Republicans sound like. This is Congressman Crenshaw with my colleague Chuck Todd.
This is the issue that many people have, is that you're sitting here trying to say, no, I just had a specific question, yet what you did gets weaponized by the former president. Did you see the rantings of him yesterday? And to the point where a Republican official in Maricopa County called the former president unhinged. I understand you guys want to put this behind you, but Chuck, he is the leader of your party, and he doesn't stop talking about this nonsense.
Chuck, look, he's one of many leaders in the party. He's a former president. We're 5 months into President Biden's presidency. And there is a time to move on. And look, you guys in the press love doing this, and I get it, right? the press is largely liberal. They're largely pro-Democrat.
No, don't start that. That is the late look. There's nothing lazier. There's nothing lazier than that.
There's a lot of reasoning to keep this alive.
I understand what you're trying to appease.
There's a lot of people in my party that take the bait. I'm not going to take the bait here.
I'm not trying to bait you. I'm trying to figure out why do we sit here and have a political party that is basically rallying around this bizarre lie and mythology that the former president is doing, and you guys just want to say, hey, pay no attention to this, that somehow we in the press are bringing that up. It's the former president.
Jason, I'm going to have to turn this over to you in a second because until we do these conversations on premium cable, I might swear here. It's not bait. It's a trough of garbage that they're all binging on. The notion that they're getting, ooh, here, kitty, 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 they are just all gorging at the trough of BS. That's why they purged Liz Cheney that week. What is he talking about?
Dan Crenshaw's a liar. Dan Crenshaw's always been a liar. Dan Crenshaw has been a part of this sort of nonsense from the beginning. Remember, during the Georgia sort of evaluation and audit, whatever, remember he was doing commercials where he was jumping out of an airplane like it was Point Break, to go down and help in Georgia. He is a part of this nonsense. And what they do is they try to gaslight any reporter who asks him a direct question and say, I'm not responsible for this. And their hands are covered in cookie jar and stuff, right? So, but this is the problem. And we can look specifically at the state that Dan Crenshaw, Representative Dan Crenshaw, is from. When you see these laws being introduced, when you see questioning of the rules that are actually in place, it's not just the laws, Nicole. What concerns me is we all know that the application of these laws and penalties will not be consistent. We know that it's going to be poll workers in black and brown and Democratic areas who are going to end up being investigated. We know that it's Democratic-leaning counties that are going to have these audits. Every single time I see something in Dan Crenshaw's state of Texas about, hey, we're going to make sure the poll workers don't make mistakes, I think of Crystal Mason. This is a black woman who has been fighting for years, since 2016, to not go to jail because she voted by accident, and the Texas Supreme Court has been trying to put this woman in jail. And you don't see that kind of effort being put forward for the dozens of Republicans that we seem to run into every single year who have dead wives, husbands, next-door neighbors, and everything else like that voting. So we can't give Dan Crenshaw any credibility in these conversations because he is a part of the lie, he is a perpetuator of the lie, and if there is ever any question about it, he's promoting policies that will punish people who actually want to vote their truth.
So, Pete Strzok, Jason set it up perfectly. I don't have a dead wife. I have a murdered wife. Let me read you this headline from the Washington Post. Man charged with wife's murder illegally cast her ballot for Trump. I just thought, give him another vote. Barry Morphew was charged this month with murdering his wife. This week, things got stranger still. Barry was also accused of casting his wife's ballot in a fraudulent vote for President Donald Trump. Barry echoed Trump's false claims of election fraud as a motivation for his own alleged wrongdoing, according to an affidavit filed Thursday in court. The 53-year-old told FBI agents last month that he did it because, quote, all these other guys are cheating, and said his wife would have backed Trump anyway. If he hadn't murdered him, quote, I just thought give him another vote. Pete Strzok. It is already illegal to commit voter fraud. And the FBI already has a system for sort of sussing out criminal voter fraud. I think that's lost on, I don't know if it's lost on elected Republican officials. I suppose it could be, but I'm guessing that's lost on a lot of the people who believe that that voter fraud somehow goes unsanctioned in this country.
Well, it's really disconcerting, Nicole, and I think you see it in this case. You see it in a lot of the plea negotiations that are going on with some of the January 6th insurrectionists, and there's this fundamental breakdown of any sort of personal sense of responsibility. There's an extraordinary sense of projection going on. The other side is doing this. The other side is plotting. These things are going on, so it makes it okay for me. And the reality, when you start getting to the bottom of all these investigations, is they aren't going on both sides. They're going on by Trump supporters who are either voting for him twice on behalf of their murdered wife, or whether they're storming a Capitol and trying to upset the vote. The facts and the investigations are all leading in one direction, and it's leading to a lot of people who are sitting there simply standing back and saying, I don't have any responsibility for this because, one, the other side's already doing it, which is false, but somehow that makes it okay, and two, I have no obligation to follow the law in response to this perceived slight by the other side. I don't understand it. I don't know where we've lost this sense of personal obligation to adhere to the law on the part of the party of law and order. It makes no sense to me how we lost that.
And on Friday, Pete Strzok, the Department of Homeland Security issued a new or re-up the warning that domestic violent extremism pinned to an ideology of grievances represents a heightened state of threat for the entire country. Just putting your sort of FBI hat on, do you think the Bureau is having to recalibrate and reallocate resources to do this really tricky work of monitoring those kinds of threats?
Absolutely. I mean, this is extraordinarily difficult work. To begin with, it is sensitive because it involves political speech. Anytime the Bureau starts investigating people who are on the fringes of expressing political beliefs, you run into real concerns about impinging on First Amendment protected activity. But the fact of the matter is this radicalism is there. And you add this threat on top of a massive, massive effort that's going on to investigate and prosecute these hundreds and hundreds of people who are involved in January 6th. It is a large, I mean, to say it's large is an understatement. It is a massive undertaking, which I'm certain involves all 56 of the FBI's field offices, and it necessarily is going to have to involve a much greater number of agents and investigators than were involved at the end of last year.
Tim, I want to show you Liz Cheney specifically on the threat, on the danger, because a lot of people have sort of speculated about all that was behind her decision, and I know she's given a lot of interviews, but I think at its core is real concern about this radicalized Republican Party representing a new and grave threat. Here she is talking to Jonathan Karl.
I think it's dangerous. I think that we have to recognize how quickly things can unravel. We have to recognize what it means for the nation to have a former president who has not conceded and who continues to suggest that our electoral system cannot function, cannot do the will of the people.
When you say dangerous, dangerous how? Are you suggesting that January 6th could happen again, or maybe something worse?
I think there's no question.
Tim, do you agree with that sense? And to that end, why not speed the investigation into 1-6? If heaven forbid something else happens, you don't have a whole party that wasn't interested in protecting the country.
Well, look, Nicole, of course, I totally agree with that. And I think that what Liz has been hitting on these interviews that she's right about is that it's dangerous both in the micro and the macro, right? And I think that there's real danger to the people in Arizona right now and to election officials in Arizona. If you think about poll workers, who's going to want to go be a poll worker in 2022 after what we saw on 1-6 and elsewhere? And it's dangerous in the macro, right? I mean, I think Liz Cheney brought up that there's no special, sort of magic beans that we have in America that protects us from autocracy, right? Like these things can slip away, just as they've slipped away in Hungary, just as they slipped away elsewhere. And I think we've seen that over the last 4 years. So look, I completely agree with speeding up 1-6. I was encouraged that John Katko, who was one of the members of the House that voted for impeachment, signed on with the Democrats for that, to move that through the House. And hopefully we can speed that forward. But I think that is Liz's really key insight here, is that we do need to, we can't just let the news cycle allow us to wash away our memory of this threat. We need to continue at a code orange here, if not a code red, in thinking about the real physical threats to people involved in our democracy and also just the broader macro threats to our democracy.
Well, I mean, Jason, to take that micro and macro analysis, I mean, this is how Liz Cheney talked about the threat of foreign terrorism after 9/11. I know, I worked with her. And to look at the fact that we have the micro, which, I know what Tim's saying, but I think that means the immediate threat to our safety at home, and the macro, the erosion of the most central democratic norm. Is our hair adequately on fire, if that's what she's really saying?
Mine's gone. Okay, like it's been on fire since Trump got in office. Like I don't understand people whose hair is just on fire now. Like this has always been dangerous. There's a great PBS documentary on right now, The Rise of the Nazi Party, and I know sometimes people think that that's hyperbolic. It's not. I spent time in Germany in 2016. I've talked to German political scientists about this, and one of the conclusions you can draw from this documentary is that in order to stop a functional democracy from being overtaken by an authoritarian regime, you have to protect voting rights. You have to hold politicians accountable, and you have to stop disinformation. Right now, you cannot trust the Republican Party to do any of those things. They will not stop disinformation. They will not hold politicians accountable, and they certainly won't do anything to change or open up voting rights. So this really is dependent on the Democratic Party. It's dependent on Joe Biden. It's dependent on Merrick Garland. Because what we are seeing right now, and again, people are going to say this is hyperbolic, but basically the Republican Party has just become the sort of cover for what is a violent, anti-government, authoritarian militia. That's what we saw on January 6th. And those groups, because so many people were not arrested, because so many of those people managed to leave and get home and fly to vacations and everything else like that, they're plotting their next attack. Why wouldn't they? They haven't been held accountable. So whether it's Liz Cheney or anybody else, I'm tired of people saying this is bad and dangerous. It's been over 120 days since that attack, and I still haven't seen any members of Congress who were supposedly giving insurrectionists tours the day beforehand taken to jail. I don't think this country is taking this seriously, and until something else terrible happens, unfortunately, I don't think they will.
Well, I would go one step further. Something terrible already happened. I mean, we're already there. So I think, putting down a marker with one of the two parties is a fruitless undertaking at this point. Jason Johnson, Tim Miller, thank you for starting us off this hour. I think you might have made me more scared, but thank you for being honest.